I've been watching a lot of red pill, manosphere, or whatever you call it videos lately. While watching my umpteenth video, something hit me like a ton of bricks. These new maxims that the red pillars have come up with recently, these can be found in the Bible. Put differently, the manosphere has rediscovered what has been in the Bible all along. In this playlist, I'll prove my point and show you what the Bible has to say about a woman's nature, the evil that women are capable of. Consider these two facts about those who lived in ancient times. First, there were dire consequences for making wrong decisions. There was no safety net, no margin for error, no police to call on, no government to rescue you. If your crops failed, you or your children might be sold into slavery. Those who were on the losing side of a war could expect to be killed or put into slavery. Second, keeping written records was difficult, tedious, and expensive. Only the most important things were recorded. In ancient times, the price for wisdom was high, as the ancients were constantly navigating life or death circumstances. And due to the high cost of keeping a written record, only the most precious pieces of wisdom were written down for posterity. There's a point made in the Exodus account of when God sent Moses and Aaron to deliver a message to Pharaoh. Moses showed him a miracle by having Aaron throw down his staff. The Exodus story continues. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then summoned wise men and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same thing by their secret arts. Each one threw down his staff and it became a snake, but Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. The point made in these verses is that God will swallow up anything opposed to him and his message, which is his word. We can apply this to the conventional wisdom of our age. We live in a time where the majority, at least in the West, believe that, because these past couple of centuries we've seen enormous leaps in technology, morals and social norms are equally malleable, that they can, and should, change with the times also. They expect that they can bend society to their will, disregarding the opposing arguments from both sides of the aisle, namely those who profess the Bible to be the ultimate truth on the one hand, and those who believe evolutionary biology to be the truth on the other. They dismiss both of these, but recall what Paul said in a letter to Timothy. And by the way, I'm reading from the Burmeister's New Testament, which you can download for free from the link in the description. 2 Timothy 3:9. But never mind that, they won't get very far. The fact is, their folly will be perfectly clear to everyone, as the folly of those guys Jannes and Jambres also became perfectly clear to everyone. The Bible is divided into books, one of them being the book of Proverbs, written by Solomon, whom the scriptures claim was the wisest man who ever lived. Solomon wrote Proverbs as instruction for his teenage son as he came of age. There are many lessons to learn from this treasure of a book, and I'll relay a few here. Proverbs assigns names to some stereotypical personalities. Two of these are the scoffer and the mocker. A scoffer is one who turns his nose up at wisdom. A mocker ridicules things like the Bible and those who believe in it. The Bible has been scoffed at and ridiculed for decades, but as I read what Paul wrote to Timothy, the folly of those guys has become perfectly clear to everyone. Proverbs in particular and the Bible in general give advice concerning certain types of women. Take it to heart. Don't join in with those who are scoffers and mockers. These words of wisdom are true. Industrialized nations have reached a crisis stage in regard to marriage, relationships, and childbearing. The Bible has things to say on these topics. You can either listen to it and heed it or be a scoffer and a mocker. The choice is yours. In the Bible, the word simplicity has different meanings. In some cases, it's a desirable quality, and in other cases, it's undesirable and is to be avoided. This is one instance where simplicity is desirable. 2 Corinthians 11:3. I fear that somehow that's not the case. As the serpent deceived Eve with his cunning trickery, he would somehow seduce your minds and draw you away from the simplicity, i.e. straightforward, without conniving, ulterior motives, hidden agendas, or religious quid pro quo, and the purity which has Christ as its goal. If you get the unabridged edition of the Burmeister's New Testament, the Greek word for simplicity used in this verse is linked to its occurrence in 2 Corinthians 9:11. If one's faith in Christ or one's generosity is simple, it means that it lacks complications. I'll give you an analogy. If you ask somebody how their relationship with their girlfriend or boyfriend is and they answer, "It's complicated," then that probably means that they're in a situationship where something isn't quite right. It's complicated means it's not simple. Simple is better in this case. But in other contexts, simplicity should be avoided, like it's used in Proverbs, where it's used as another personality stereotype. Now, when I first read Proverbs years ago and saw this word, it didn't make sense to me. It probably doesn't make sense to a lot of other people as well. That's why the NIV helps out explaining the word simple by adding this footnote, which reads, "The Hebrew word rendered simple in Proverbs denotes a person who is gullible, without moral direction, and inclined to evil." That's true, of course, but understanding what Proverbs means by simple can be inferred from its usage. I'll put up a verse to demonstrate, Proverbs 14:15. "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thoughts to their steps." What's inferred from this proverb is that the stereotypical simple person takes things at face value, not looking under the surface, jumps into things without thought and consideration. Other proverbs confirm the NIV note about a simple person being without moral direction. Proverbs 132, for example. But I'll skip over the simple person's moral aspect and just focus on the bullets I just listed. In the New Testament, Jesus and John spoke about something called the world. You can read about it in John 17:14, 1 John 2:15 through 17, for example. Among other things, the definition of the world is the thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, and collective wisdom of the functioning system of human society, with an emphasis on those who don't believe in the one true God and who don't follow his precepts. The New Testament tells Christians not to be a part of the world, but for many modern-day Christians, this is not the case. The fact that Christians ought not be of the world means that Christianity has a red pill aspect to it. The only question remains what Christians should and shouldn't be red-pilled about. But I'm focusing on just a sliver of red pill here, specifically the unpopular things the Bible has to say about woman's nature, many of which agree with the axioms of the manosphere. And for the record, the Bible has much to say about the evil aspects of men too, but this is well understood. Many of those who don't agree with this line of teaching are simple. The simple person takes what society has handed him without question. On the other hand, a scoffer looks down on anything contrary to the conventional wisdom. Scoffers refuse to consider anything other than what the world tells them. Someone who's simple sees no importance for taking a closer look at what the Bible says about women, relationships, and marriage. A man should not go through life being simple. Take what the Bible says to heart, Proverbs 1:22. How long will you who are simple love your simple ways? Understand that foolishness and folly is easy to fall prey to. Proverbs 9:13-15. Folly is an unruly woman. She is simple and knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house on a seat at the highest point of the city, calling out to those who pass by, who go straight on their way, "Let all who are simple come to my house." Another personality stereotype found in Proverbs is the sluggard. The sluggard has the following characteristics: won't defer short-term gratification for long-term, is too lazy to take action when necessary, is too lazy to act in his own best self-interest, neglects due diligence. The book of Proverbs is divided into a long introductory discourse on wisdom, which ends at the 10th chapter, at which point the actual Proverbs begin. The introduction has nested in it a passage about the sluggard. The bullet points I just listed are demonstrated in and confirmed by this passage. Proverbs 6:6-11. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. It amazes me how carelessly the average man approaches relationships and marriage. Few are willing to invest any time in researching this important topic, as they are swept away by feelings and emotion. Many are blue-pilled because they're sluggards, because they're too lazy to study an area of life which has a huge impact on their happiness, wealth, and well-being. The world tells you to just follow your feelings when it comes to relationships. But don't be a blue-pilled sluggard. Do your research. In Proverbs introduction, Solomon advises his son to recognize and stay clear of evil people. He gives general warnings concerning those who are evil, but also gives warnings pertaining to evil men in particular and to evil women in particular. But there's something that's interesting. Solomon spent more time warning his son about women than about men. I scanned through the intro, found these occurrences, and broke this down in a table. The left column is the chapter number followed by the verse or range of verses. The next column summarizes what these verses say. Then I mark these verses as pertaining to men specifically or pertaining to women specifically. For those verses which might be applicable to either gender, I put a question mark in the woman's column but scored it against the men and not the women. The final two columns are a running total of the number of verses. This total counts the number of verses in the row and adds it to the cumulative total which is displayed. As you can see, there's more than 3 times the number of warning verses about women than about men. Like Solomon tutoring his son as he ventures forth on his own, a young man ought to take heed to the wisdom of his elders and understand the arts of evil women, especially considering that women in present-day industrialized nations have many more rights and much more legal power than the women of Solomon's time had. Plus the world, modern society that is, has a neo-Marxist prejudice against men. All the more reason for a younger man to understand the pitfalls of women. Let's take a look at a passage in Proverbs which warns about evil men. Proverbs 1:10 through 14. My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, come along with us, let's lie in wait for innocent blood. Let's ambush some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave, and whole like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things, and fill our houses with plunder. What's described is a gang of outlaws like the robbers who hide by the side of the road and rob the traveler in the story of the Good Samaritan. Solomon is telling his son to shun their recruitment advances. This passage continues, cast lots with us, we will all share the loot. Nowadays, instead of saying, cast lots with us, we say, go up to the table and roll the dice by joining up with us. The hoodlum's pitch is salted with a pinch of truth and laced with a large dose of excitement. These hoodlums are straight up about the fact that joining them is risky. The risk promises adventure and doesn't hide the ingenuous truth that things might not turn out well. And lastly, the carrot of easy money is dangled before his eyes. Actually, this sort of pitch is quite effective, for men at least. When the Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton was recruiting for his almost ill-fated voyage, he ran this ad in the paper. Men wanted for hazardous journey, low wages, bitter cold, long hours of complete darkness, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in event of success. They say that men were lined up for a chance to be part of the expedition. Let's look again at this passage and see how sly the hoodlums are. They say, we will all share the loot, or the NASB, more literally rendering the Hebrew text, says, we will all have one money bag. In reality, the gang leader decides how the money's spent. He will naturally spend more on himself than anyone else. If anyone tries to leave and insist on taking his cut with him, he'll be denied, as those were not the terms that were agreed to. Anyone who'd fall for this is an example of someone who's simple. I'll skip the rest of this passage plus the other verses that give warnings about men. The warnings Solomon gives in the intro in regard to evil men have something in common. Stay away from those who are violent and those who are lawbreakers. I'm guessing here, but the contrast in the warnings about men versus women, that is, the reasons why there are more warnings about women than about men, is because what evil men do is obvious and blatant. Since evil men inflict physical harm, it's easy to see cause and effect. Evil women are less prone to violence, so they appear more harmless. Evil women have to rely on subtlety and seduction. When God gave Moses the 10 Commandments, he had Moses climb Mount Sinai while having all of Israel gather around the base of the mountain. The scene was terrifying. Exodus 20:18-19. When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us or we will die." This symbolizes the seriousness with which the Ten Commandments should be taken, but over time, respect for these commandments has waned. But back in the days when the average person grew up, got a job, got married and had children, and lived out his or her life, morality was stronger. This is one reason why so few people are getting married these days. I say all of this to highlight one of the 10 Commandments, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," Exodus 20:14. You must understand the gravity of this commandment before looking at what Proverbs says about the adulteress. Now I'll read something from the Bible you don't hear in church much anymore, something Jesus said. Matthew 5:31, "But what I say is this, divorcing your wife for any reason except in the case of sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery when she remarries, and whoever remarries after having divorced is an adulterer." Now, I'm not going to get into a long discussion about what the Bible says about divorce and remarriage, as there is more to this topic than what Jesus said in this verse. But on the other hand, over the years I've heard pastors and teachers downplay the more expansive definition of adultery Jesus gave here. I'll just make these generalizations. A woman who divorces her husband for frivolous reasons is an adulteress. I'm going under the assumption that most men and women who divorce for frivolous reasons see nothing wrong with dating and marrying again, and when they do so, they come under Jesus' expansive definition of adultery. A woman who cheats on her boyfriend is an adulteress in the making. This is according to the theme of the Sermon on the Mount. The thoughts and actions which originate as sin are also a sin. Without further muddying the waters, the point is this. The Proverbs warning against the adulterous woman applies to more women than one would expect. Breaking the covenant of marriage is a serious transgression, and according to Jesus, it is adultery. Assuming you remarry, of course. Before I read the first passage of the adulterous woman in the Proverbs intro, take a look at the preceding context. Proverbs 2, starting in verse 12. "Wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse, who have left the straight paths to walk in dark ways, who delight in doing wrong and rejoice in the perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways." Solomon deals with evil men first, then jumps straight to evil women. Who are these evil women? Enter the adulterous stereotype of Proverbs. Wisdom will save you also from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words. I have another video on the wayward woman, so I won't cover that here, except to say that a wayward woman is an evil creature. Unlike evil men, they can be difficult to recognize. Who has left the partner of her youth and ignored the covenant she made before God. Left the partner of her youth. This is hypergamy and monkey branching. This has been going on for all of human history. It's not just a modern phenomenon. Is the more expansive definition of adulteress beginning to make more sense? Do you see how this applies to so many modern women? This woman has ignored the covenant she made before God. When two people get married, they make a promise of death do us part or something of that nature. It's a covenant. It's a promise to each other and a promise before God of staying in the marriage. We've trivialized this covenant to the point where there's no shame to those who break it for frivolous reasons. And women are more prone to do this than men, seeing that they initiate the majority of the divorces. Solomon is stern in his warning here. Based on the flow of this chapter of Proverbs, you might even argue that he's equating the evil of a violent hooligan to that of an adulterous woman. Listen to the effect this woman has on the men who get involved with her. Surely her house leads down to death, and her paths to the spirits of the dead. None who go to her return or attain the paths of life. I'll give a short explanation of the Old Testament conceptualization of death. It was imagined that those who died descended down into the depths of the earth. That's why verse 18 says, leads down to death. But more importantly, the word death, as used in the Bible, is not just physical, but can mean the destruction of a person's life. Though still alive physically, he walks around like the living dead. This describes men whose wives cheat on them or divorce them. Her paths lead to the spirits of the dead. Men lose their house, lose their children, are wiped out financially, and are set back 10 or 20 years. If you want to know what Solomon meant when he said, "Her house leads down to death," then just read these YouTube comments here. This is the death he's talking about, and mostly it's not a physical death. But sometimes it's both the destruction of your life and physical death. Here's an example. Years ago, my father took subcontracting jobs from a fellow. The two of them worked together for years. One day, this guy's wife up and left him. He self-deleted. A couple of weeks later, my mother, by accident, and she was in the habit of doing this, asked my dad if he got any new jobs from so-and-so. Solomon warns against women like this, and they are in abundance in our day and age. He said, "None who go to her return or attain the paths of life." This means you won't find happiness, contentment, or satisfaction in life in a relationship with a woman like this. She'll make your life miserable. She'll make you a walking zombie. Wisdom will save you from the adulterous woman. Get wisdom. Don't be simple or be a scoffer and believe the blue pill narrative. Solomon doubles down on the warnings about the adulteress. As if the previous passage wasn't enough, the entire 7th chapter is dedicated to it. Why the repetition? And why so long? Why no repeated warning about men? Obviously because when it comes to women, a large measure is needed. What Solomon says in Proverbs is the same as what the red-pilled channels do. They repeat the same message over and over. This is done for good reason. Not only does it take time for the message to sink in, but the subject must be approached from different angles in order to be properly understood. You can know something in your head to be true, but that doesn't mean you can apply it in real life. Throughout Proverbs, Solomon repeats himself with admonitions to seek out and keep hold of wisdom. Repeat, repeat, repeat. The start of the 7th chapter is yet another plea to acquire wisdom and hold on to it dearly. Proverbs 7:1. My son, keep my words and store up my commands within you. Keep my commands and you will live. Guard my teachings as the apple of your eye. In the original Hebrew, the apple of your eye refers to the pupil, with some scholars specifying that it refers to the reflected image in the pupil. The apple of your eye is the thing a person looks intently at and won't stare away from. In the Bible, the eye is a figure of speech, which means considering something carefully or dwelling and meditating on it. Incidentally, Jesus' remark in Matthew 6:22 that the eye is the lamp of the body means that your body will be permeated with whatever you meditate on. Anyways, bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your heart. I'll explain. There are commandments in the law of Moses which instruct the Israelites to write verses down for the purpose of memorizing them and getting them to sink in. One such commandment is to keep a small tablet with a verse from the law scribbled on it on one's forehead, on one's arm, or on one's gates and doorposts. Another similar practice is the wearing of phylacteries. Some Jews still do this, as you can see in this picture. Solomon wants his son to treasure wisdom the same way, not to literally write it down per se, but to figuratively write it on a tablet which is kept in his heart. Say to wisdom, "You are my sister," and to insight, "You are my relative." This is a metaphor, and to understand its meaning, consider this. Both brother and sister are close kin that in the course of growing up you have a lot in common with and spend a lot of time together with. The difference is that a brother has the responsibility of watching over and protecting his sister from what goes on outside of the family. The reason why Solomon wants his son to treat wisdom like a sister and not like a brother is that he wants him to guard over it and protect it. But what I'm talking about is applying wisdom to relationships. When it comes to relationships, so many people throw wisdom out the window, or they act wisely in the early stages of dating but let wisdom slip away over the course of a few months. Incidentally, this is just one of many passages in the Bible that show us how important the family should be. I won't dwell on that now, but keep that in the back of your mind for another video. Solomon then segues into the second warning about the adulteress. Let's walk through the lessons here and learn some of the traits and characteristics of evil women. They will keep you from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words. The wayward woman is a topic for another video. Monitor this channel for it. But know that a woman who cheats on her husband or divorces him for frivolous reasons is wayward, and that wayward women go after married men or go after another man when they're in a relationship. At the same time, this verse says that wayward women are good at enticing men. They turn on the charm, the smiles, the soft words, the sexy looks. Men, be wise. Don't fall for it. It doesn't take much for a wayward woman to become discontent with her relationship. She'll start scheming and will target the next guy before she divorces or breaks up with her spouse or boyfriend. This is what the prototype woman in this verse does. Men, any woman who's married or in a relationship with another man and approaches you, have nothing to do with her. If she's not married but has a boyfriend, as far as you are able, make sure she's actually broken up with her boyfriend and not just DM'd you after getting into a fight. If you know who her boyfriend is, if at all possible, contact him and get the story straight. A weapon many a woman has at her disposal is her ability to convince men that her excuses for her poor behavior are true. Such a woman blames others and takes little, if any, responsibility for her own actions. Solomon is hinting that you shouldn't be seduced by her words when her actions are to the contrary. At the window of my house, I looked down through the lattice. I saw among the simple, I noticed among the young men, a youth who had no sense. Here's that word, simple, again. A simple person has no sense. He jumps into something without thinking it through first, doesn't contemplate what could go wrong, and doesn't consider what the long-term consequences would be. As it says, I saw among the simple. What's insinuated is that simple people hang out with other simple people, and they form a clique, and the clique has their own favorite hangout. Avoid company like that. Some men have no sense when it comes to women. No sense at all. Solomon spotted this guy from a distance and monitored his moves. We know friends, acquaintances, and relatives who just make dumb mistakes. They get into relationships with women they shouldn't. Let's see how this unfolds. He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house, at twilight as the day was fading, as the star of night set in. Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. It says here in Scripture that she's dressed like a 304. 304s have always dressed a certain way. I don't know what they look like in ancient times, but nowadays things like tight outfits and fillers are giveaways. Not every woman who dresses like this is a 304, but all 304s dress similarly. Anyways, she had her eyes on him and was just waiting for him to pass by. She had planned this well in advance. Fellas, always remember that women are a few steps ahead of you when it comes to that first encounter. The average man doesn't think about these sort of things like a woman does. Women are always conniving when it comes to men. This is not always bad, as a good woman will select a man of character and arrange circumstances so he bumps into her and asks her out. I know a fellow who told me that a couple years after he was married, and he and his wife had several children, his wife said to him running into her and asking her out was a clever plan she hatched. He was surprised. If the woman is good, conniving of that sort is good, but it's not good if the woman is wayward. At this point in the chapter, Solomon goes off on a tangent describing some of the characteristics of the wayward woman. She is unruly and defiant. Unruly means she's loud, breaks social norms, carries on like someone who gets drunk, gets into trouble for being loud. Defiant means she regards anyone in authority as her enemy, is disagreeable, has an attitude like all the world is out to get her and she's not going to let them. Nowadays it's the evil patriarchy. To get a better picture of this, the women in this TikTok are unruly and defiant. Listen to them.
Hey, question, ma'am. If you could describe your dating life.
My friend just got groped. My friend got sexually assaulted just now on the 6th Street.
And how do you handle that?
I handle that by saying...
Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares. At every corner she lurks. Putting this in modern vernacular, she gets bored easily. She's got an itch where she has to go out all the time, and since they didn't have clubs back then, she goes to all the busy streets, the squares where people gather and socialize, where the marketplace is, where there's always a loud crowd, and where everybody is watching and she can get a lot of attention. As there's no peace in her heart, she has to go from place to place looking for something or someone to fill her empty soul. Solomon returns to his narrative. She took hold of him and kissed him, and with a brazen face she said, Men, some women will brazenly approach you like this. Beware, it can get you into a lot of trouble. This reminds me of the story in Genesis of Joseph and Potiphar's wife, how she asked him to sleep with him. He refused, and she then proceeded to accuse him of rape. The evil nature in women has been around for millennia. Today I fulfilled my vows, and I have food from my fellowship offering at home. Instead of today I fulfilled my vows, the NASB says, I was due to offer peace offerings. Here's the backstory. There were different types of animal sacrifices designated by the Old Testament law of Moses, and there are specific instructions in the law, which are found in the book of Leviticus, specifying how to perform the sacrifice. These sacrifices were a sacred part of the ancient Jewish religion, and the instructions were to imbue a sense of solemnness, holiness, and reverence on the part of the one making the sacrifice. The peace offering was not a recurring calendar event, but was initiated because of a vow or a spontaneous expression of thankfulness to God. The meat from this sacrifice was divided up, and some was given to the priest, and some was kept by the person making the offering, who was instructed to take this meat reserved for himself or herself and eat it on the same day as the sacrifice, making a solemn meal out of it, a celebration dedicated to God. That's what the commandments pertaining to this sacrifice are teaching. Much of the law of Moses is like this, a multitude of commandments which have you doing rituals for the purpose of making you think long and hard about something. That's the way the law works, but that's not what this woman had in mind. So I came out to meet you, I looked for you, and have found you. This is what she was up to. She's using the peace offering feast to lure this chump in. She had this planned all along, and this thing with the peace offering was just a game to her. She has no reverence for that which is holy. Add this to your red flags for women. Any woman who doesn't respect her religion, nation, or her ancient traditions won't respect her man either. Women who won't bow their head during prayer or during the national anthem or Pledge of Allegiance, who are constantly distracted, giggling, have disdain for such observances, and don't feel any solemnness at all on such occasions, will disrespect and dishonor their boyfriends and husbands too, as they have no reverence for anything. Add this to the list of red flags. I have covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let's drink deeply of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. Instead of saying this, a modern-day woman might say, I've been saving a nice bottle of wine for a special occasion, and I just bought a sexy outfit I want to try out on you. Come over and we'll pass the night away with some soft music. Tempting, isn't it? The adulteress and women like her are so enticing, but you must see beyond that. The simple man only sees the enticement and nothing more. My husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money and will not be home till full moon. Yet another piece of evidence that she's been planning this for days. She got bored with her husband a long while before and started looking for fun and adventure. Women who get bored in their relationships do so because of the spiritual darkness which exists on the inside of them, and they look to fill the void with some thrill or adventure. When men get bored like this, they seek the thrill or adventure through activities they do themselves. However, when a woman is bored, she looks for a boyfriend or husband to supply the thrills and the adventure. I'll do a video on this sometime, but the lesson to be learned is that women who get bored in their relationships like this adulteress here are dangerous to a man. Even more so now, since much of society, including the legal system, are biased against men. You can't afford to get involved with a woman who gets bored easily. Working overtime to pay the rent is boring. Raising children is boring, especially when they're young. Life is full of boredom, and only by means of the peace, joy, and patience Paul spoke about in Galatians 5:22 and 23 can many women endure the boredom of staying at home and raising children. With persuasive words she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. Let me just pause to say that some of the most dangerous people in this world are the smoothest talkers. All at once he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter. When an ox is led to slaughter, it has no idea where it's going. To the ox, it's just the same old routine up until the last second. It's like that for the simple man who gets involved with a wayward woman. Everything is going well, then, bam, things just explode. The similes continue. Like a deer stepping into a noose till an arrow pierces his liver. When an arrow pierces someone's liver, he dies a slow, painful death. This reminds me of a story I heard about a notorious German sniper in World War II who used to purposely shoot Russian soldiers in the kidneys so they'd die a slow, painful death, so that this would strike terror into the hearts of the enemy. Like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Jesus said things like this all the time, like, Very, verily, verily, I say unto you. And by the measure that you're measuring, it will be measured to you. In order to learn wisdom, you have to pay close attention to it, meditate on it, and constantly turn it over in your mind. You don't just hear it once and get it. That's why the same advice in the manosphere is rehashed over and over. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Your heart is that part of you that's deep inside of you, that's central to your thoughts and desires. You control what goes on in it. You must control what goes on in it to be successful in life. Many are the victims she has brought down, her slain are a mighty throng. You will have dealings with people in life, and you must take a look at their track record, their history. Don't just listen to the story they're telling you, especially women, because they can be so charming and believable. When a man gets into a relationship with a woman and he knows the reputation she has, how many men's lives she's destroyed, many times he'll brush it off, assuming he'll be the exception, that he's too clever, that everyone else gets destroyed, but he won't. Many a thief started his life of thievery when he was a teen, thinking he would never get caught. The first time the drug addict tried the drug he later got addicted to, he thought he would take it once or twice for the fun of it and then quit. You must go through life thinking you're not the exception, you're the rule. In this case, if a woman has destroyed other men's lives, what makes you think she won't destroy yours too if you get involved with her? Don't be simple, especially when it comes to women. Her heart is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. Most of the time, this isn't actual death, but instead is a complete devastation of your life. Guys who marry women like this get cleaned out in divorce court, end up sleeping on someone's sofa, lose everything except the shirt on their back, and sometimes don't get to see their kids for months at a time. Just read the comments in videos that men leave about being destroyed by a woman, and you'll understand what this verse means. I'll read just one of the comments. I'm going through a divorce at the moment. I haven't seen my daughters, whom I raised, in 4 months. It's been accusation after accusation, and my ex has taken full advantage of the system. I'm heartbroken. The Bible has many things to say about women. Learn from it and be wise. That said, let me leave you with this encouragement. Psalms 34:19. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all.